Hi, Chef Tim Franks from Groen CapKold. I want to talk to you about our kettles. This is our steam kettle. We also have gas and electric, but this is the steam kettle. This operates from 30 pounds up to 90 pounds, and normally around 50 to 60 pounds is a great boiler pressure. And just a side note, at 50 pounds and above, you actually can caramelize in this kettle. So the bottom of this kettle actually can work almost like a wok. So we can get temperatures up to 330 degrees inside, which is going to heat our water quick and fast up to 212. But having a steam kettle really is the fastest way to cook, and very trusted. Since the 70s, we've been utilizing this style of kettle. So let's go over this kettle from top to bottom and inside and out. So we have a very strong motor here. It's a 100-gallon kettle, and 100 gallons, if you measure water, is about 830 pounds. So a gallon of water is 8.3 pounds, so you can actually stir 830 pounds in this kettle. So this is a very strong agitator, and if you would fill this kettle with hamburger, that's going to cause a lot of weight. You might be able to go up to 1,000 pounds in this space. But hamburger's a little bit fluffy, so it may be a little bit larger for the kettle. But it's got a lot of strength. But remember, for safety reasons, if it can stir 800 to 1,000 pounds, it can stir you. So we want to be safe at all times. So this training really wants to remember and talk about is remembering these emergency stops. And I'll probably mention these several times during this introduction to the kettle. And so when we're operating this kettle, or when we're working on this kettle, those emergency stops need to be pulled out for operating, but if you're cleaning it, I always want to push my emergency stops in, and especially if I'm inside the kettle doing something. So my emergency stops are in, the kettle is deactivated at this point. So let's talk about the inside of this kettle. We've got a drain, which is air operated, and in the very bottom, it actually is opening and closing, and it's air activated because I can actually open it up to the space of a quarter. So if you're doing hamburger and you want to let the grease run out, or the fat run out of that hamburger, you can turn this dial from 0 to 5, but right about 1.5, you can open it just a hair, just to let the grease out. And at that point, you can totally control this air-operated drop-down valve. So you can separate grease to hamburger. It could take about 10 minutes for gravity feeding out through the hamburger to let all that grease go out into a metal pan, not down your drain system. But we have this wonderful air-operated drain. We will show you how to clean that later on in the video. The rest of the side of this kettle is pretty much our emergency stop, our air-operated drain, air valves. One of these air valves goes right to our drain valve, and the other one's for our pump fill that we'll hook up later, and then also the electric for the pump fill station. And so this is a electric 208 outdoor receptacle, very safe, very waterproof as long as the lid is shut. And this is also a twist lock, so we do want to remember to go in and twist, and then that also becomes watertight. Air over here can be used in a different location for different things, but primarily it's for a pump fill station, but you can also roll in clippers or other vacuum devices and utilize the air here too. Great little tool to have right on your device. On the other side, we have our emergency stop once again, and once again it's in, and we have our tilt, which I'm going to operate here in a few minutes. So looking inside, we've got that drain. What's that other silver thing down on the bottom, right down here? That's actually our RTD temperature sensor. So that actually is not touching the kettle, but it's very close. So you are getting the temperature of the product, not the temperature of the kettle, when that is reading the temperature on our digital display. Then we've got our agitator and breaker bar. And then what is this in here for? Well, really what it's doing is breaking away product from the agitator. So if you ever have an agitator spinning and you have hamburger, we don't want a basketball-sized meatball in there. That's going to break it off the agitator and take it down to a small particulate piece, so it's not going to be so large of a chunk. So that's what this breaker bar is doing as the agitator goes into it and hits this angle and splits the product. So it actually gives you a good complete stir and actually kind of scrapes your agitator as you're working. Agitator blades do come out for cleaning once a day, or if you're changing products and you really want to give it a good cleaning in between. This is a clip, a paddle holder, and a pin. One side of this is straight, one side of this is crooked, and so it's pretty hard to take the crooked side and go too far in there, but the straight side slides in beautifully and simple. So at that point, as I'm working with this and cleaning it, I want to keep my fingers on this metal bar, but we're going to go to the dishwasher, we're going to take this apart, we're going to reassemble it, and at that point we're going to take this little pin and keep it on the inside, and then keep your fingers on it so you don't lose it. We're going to take our clip, and then we're going to actually put it in place right over here. Now we've got these little hangers with like a fork on the bottom, and I like that fork because it actually tells me where to put my paddle, and they're on both sides. So you want to look at the paddle and make sure the curve of the paddle goes with the curve of the kettle, so you don't put it on backwards. At that point, with that curve, you're really scraping the kettle in that direction. Take our little ring, our circle, and we're going to place it here, but we're going to pull it forward. At that point, it's already lined it up for me, and it made it nice and easy to just slide this into place. Make sure this pin is in place. So at that point, I'm going to come back here and drop that down, and then we got this circle down below. We just want to line those up and then push down. This is actually pretty strong and pretty hard to put on and off. It's not as simple as it looks. We don't want it to be too simple because we're going to be stirring 800 to 1,000 pounds of hamburger. So it needs to be nice and strong and made out of metal. If this was all plastic, it wouldn't last. We've had agitators and kettles out there for 30 or 40 years, and these are still working great today. So that's our agitator. This is our kettle inside. So I'm going to take the emergency stops outwards. So now we have the ability to work with our kettle. Now we can tilt it forward all the way, or we can tilt it straight up. And since we're going to operate it, let's take it up. I'm going to turn it on, add some water, and then turn our agitator on. Now, there is some emergency systems in here you must be aware of. Not only do the emergency stops stop the activation of the agitator, but the tilt also does. If you're in a tilt, these two switches are lined up and tied together in series with the kettle, so the kettle will not operate at this angle. Going all the way up, it makes contact, and now it is ready to operate. So we're tied all together here, kettle, agitator, and emergency stops. I want to check my drain, and it is closed. So let's walk over to the kettle and turn it on. So we're back at the kettle control. We're going to open up, and at this point, we're going to turn on our kettle. We're demonstrating, so I'm going to turn the temperature down a bit. So we put it at 100 degrees. We're going to go ahead and turn that on. We're going to go ahead and put some water in our kettle. There we go. Enter. And then I'm going to reset. And then we're going to go ahead and fill. And then while we're over here, let's go ahead and turn our agitator on. And our agitator's at 50%. Let's turn it up to 80%. Go back. Check and start. All right, let's go see what's going on. So our water is going into our kettle. Our agitator is operating, and we're starting our temperature. So at this point, our product is going to be heating up, and we really are self-containing this entire process into just putting your product in and letting it do its thing. Now at this point, it's all up to your recipe when you're going to start or stop. But remember, if we have any emergencies or any problems, your emergency stops are always here. I want you to be aware of them at all times to turn this kettle on and off. We just were at the top of the kettle, now we're at the bottom. Let's show how to disassemble the valve at the end of the day for cleaning. First, we take this clamp, which is a triclover clamp, and remove. I'm going to take that to the dishwasher. And then we've got this air-operated drop-down valve. Beauty of this valve, with the air control, we can make it easier to put on and off. When we place it back up inside, the space of this valve is about a ½ an inch longer than the space given, so it's always pushing to keep the product in the kettle. Go ahead and operate that valve for me. And it makes it pretty easy to put back on when the valve's actually activated with air and retracted. But this is how it's going to be disconnected, taken to the dishwasher. At that point, I really like to just clean the top of this and not submerge the bottom. But it pretty much needs to be just cleaned with simple soaps like 3-compartment sink soap. Nothing special, no hard chemicals. At that point, we're going to lube this back up and we're going to put it back together. But go ahead and operate that valve one more time, all the way down. And so the main concern here is the ease of putting it back in and taking it back out. This is the position you want that valve. You actually want it hooked up and the air on as you're putting it back together. So we're going to go ahead and keep tearing this down, keep repeating that. So we've got our one gasket, we've got our one O-ring, and we've got our valve. And at this point, we've got our removable top that spins on for replacement, and then we've got our O-ring down here. The O-ring pops right out. We're going to put a lubricant in here. Recommendation is a mineral oil based thick lubricant, Taylor Lube, Johnson Lube, and there are several others on the market that are made for food, not oil based, but petroleum is kind of an oil problem, but mineral oil is a diuretic and actually food grade, so mineral oil based lubricant to go underneath this right here. At that point, I want to show you how to remove the valve on the bottom of the kettle, but we actually have the kettle tilted. So if you have a kitchen where this is able to be done from the back, this is a great method to remove this valve. We're going to take our tri-clover clamp bracket clamp off like this. We're going to carefully grab the gasket as we pull this off. And then we're going to disconnect our air and leave our valve off to the side for now. We're also going to remove this spout. And this is a Y, so the product is actually coming out the front, and our valve is up and down. We're going to remove the clamp again. So at the end of the day, in between batches, you don't have to remove this, but at the end of the day, this is a food zone, so this is a great item to remove. So our clamps are off, and we're going to wiggle this out just slowly. At this point, we've got a couple O-rings. You want to make sure those O-rings get cleaned and lubed. When we're lubricating, we really want to use something like a food grade. So you want to make sure you're using the proper lube on these items when you're putting it back together. So we're going to clean our O-rings and our gaskets. Simple soap and water, like a 3-compartment sink. Nothing more stronger than that. And we're going to put our lubricant on our items and put them right back. Get that lubricant right into the groove. Be very, a little extra is not going to be a problem. We're going to spread that out. It's going to be a great thing. Now, put on your O-ring with the lube on there. We're going to press the lube in and under the O-ring. That'll actually keep dirt out. And at that point, our O-ring's in place. We'll just smooth out the rest of that lube. I'm actually going to put it right here on the inside of our kettle. And so it's lubed under the O-rings, above and around the O-rings, and then our kettle is lubed, and we're going to place our valve or spout back in place. Just going to give it a little wiggle, and it's going to slide in place. This is when you have the ability to direct your flow. So right now it's dead center going to the front of the kettle, but if your pump fill station is off to the side, before you tighten that clamp, we can actually direct it a little bit at an angle. You can take it as far as you want to a 45 degree or keep it direct straight. Totally up to you. It's a great little way to help you bend some corners with the large hoses. We're going to put our clamp back on. The upper clamp goes on. And then we're going to proceed to the lower clamp. I'll make sure it's nice and tight first. So I'm going to gather the other items. We got our lubed gasket and our clamp. We're going to take our clean valve. We're going to place it back inside with our gasket already pre-lubed. Our O-ring is already pre-lubed. Going to place it back on nice and tight. We want to make sure this has had no gap. It is very, very tight because it's going to go into this space in our gasket. So it actually fits into the clamp. And so at that point I can rotate this around to make it a little bit easier. And then we'll bring this to the side so we can tighten it nice and easy. So at this point, we have, at the end of the day, cleaned our valve and the Y spout, and you are 100% clean and good to go for your next batch tomorrow morning. That's it.